Welcome, night owls. You're tuned in to Midnight FM. Tonight's story is not about what you see out there on the highway. It's about what follows you off it. Our guest is Officer Hayes, and this one is a psychological descent into a place that doesn't exist. They called it Exit 9. This is Echoes from Exit 9.
Thank you, Jacob, for inviting me. I've worked nights long enough to know the way fatigue edits reality. Lines bend, lights smear, time stacks. You learn to measure the truth by the parts that don't move. Your speed, the mile markers, the cadence of dispatch in your ear. Those change, you pull over. You breathe. You reset. The night Exit 9 started calling, none of the anchors moved. My speed, 45 through a construction zone. The mile markers, 7, 8, then 10, no 9. I remember noticing it only because the voice on the radio said the number I wasn't seeing. Unit 27, respond to a stranded vehicle at Exit 9. I keyed my mic. Negative. Say again, there is no Exit 9 on 41 North. Dispatch crackled, then came back clean. Copy, Unit 27. Caller reports hazards flashing at the bottom of the off-ramp. Female driver. No injuries reported. I looked out into the dark and told myself this happens. Old ramp, new signage, map updates that never make it to the sign crew. Still, when you work at night, you respect the things that want you to doubt yourself. Doubt can save your life. I said, dispatch, repeat location. They said Exit 9. Slow, certain. Caller on the line says you can see a cruiser approaching. There were only 2 of us out there that hour. The other unit was 20 miles south. If someone saw a cruiser near Exit 9, they were seeing me. The next mile marker was 10 again. I wasn't lost. The world was repeating. The ramp appeared where it shouldn't have, a sliver of green sign emerging from fog like a word remembered mid-sentence. Exit 9. The number wasn't painted wrong, but my eyes didn't want it. Something in my head kept rounding it to 8 or 10. I slowed, raised the light bar to steady burn. The fog took the color and made a halo out of it. The ramp itself sloped down into a pocket of black, where the highway split around a low wooded hill. The barricades that should have blocked a decommissioned exit weren't there. The asphalt looked newly sealed, black as a cut. At the bottom, orange blinkers pulsed, like a heartbeat. A sedan with its hazards on. I said, dispatch, I have visual on a disabled vehicle. Confirm caller is still on the line. Affirmative. She says you're late. The words threaded under my vest like cold air. Advise, I said. Ask for a description of the driver. A pause. Static. Then, dark jacket, hair to the shoulder. She says, you've been here before. I put the cruiser in park at the base of the ramp with a tire kissing the fog line. The hazards tapped the night twice a second. Rain wanted to start, but hadn't decided. The air had that charge that makes your fillings ring. I angled my spotlight, The beam cut through mist and found the rear window, a film of moisture and hand-smudged arcs where someone had wiped from the inside. The driver's door was cracked, not open, that 2-inch gap that says, "I'm here, but I'm not ready to talk to you yet." "Ma'am?" I called across the hood line, keeping my hands where she could see them. "Highway Patrol, are you okay?" Nothing. "My camera is on. I'm alone." The door opened the rest of the way with a noise that made me think of a heavy book bending back a first time. A woman stepped out into the cone of my light like she'd been arranged there by a stagehand. Dark jacket, shoulder-length hair. She blinked into the brightness but didn't raise her hand to block it. "You took the wrong exit last time," she said. The words were ordinary enough to be harmless, but something in the way she said them made my body inventory every mistake I'd ever made behind the wheel. The way you catalog the small decisions that could have carried different outcomes if you nudged them a degree. "We've never met," I said. "We have, but you didn't see me." People talk that way on bad nights. Shock, stress, psych issues. You learn to meet them where they are and walk them back toward the solid parts. I asked her for her name. She told me. It wasn't a rare name, but it hit in a place that made my chest forget its rhythm. I had written it once, on a line that began with "next of kin notified." "You're mistaken," I said, but not like I believed it. Behind us, the fog did that thing fog'll do, where it pretends to be a surface until you look for edges and find none. "How long have you been waiting?" I asked. She said, "Since the first call, since you didn't take the turn." "There is no turn here," I said, "just the ramp." She stepped closer and the camera caught the way her jacket pressed a wet shape against her, as if it remembered the seat belt. "That's what you told me, the first time." "Ma'am," I said, and the word didn't feel like it fit what we were. "Are you injured?" She said, "I'm exactly as hurt as I was. And there are sentences your mind tries to rewrite as they enter because the math inside them is wrong." She turned slightly and my light fell past her into the car. The passenger space was empty. The driver's seat had that look vehicles get after an impact. The tilt wrong in a way you only notice after you've looked too long. Her hazard lights kept time. 2 beats. 2 beats. 2 beats. "Dispatch," I said into my mic, eyes on the woman. "I'm at exit 9 with the RP. Can we try a callback from your end?" Silence that wasn't empty filled my ear. Then my own voice said, "Copy," half a second after I said it. The bodycam timecode glitched, 1 frame repeating. The cool part of my brain made a note. Check the SD card later. The warm part, the animal, check the tree line for predators. "You heard that," she said. "I did," I said. "It happens." "Not like this," she said. "Not when you've already done it." "Done what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the car and turned off the hazards. The night went quiet in a way that made the ramp feel like a theater after the curtain. No frogs, no trucks on the main line, no wind. Just the low electrical throat clearing of my light bar grinding color into weather. "Please step back to the shoulder," I said, "because the ladder you climb when things tilt is procedure and it will hold your weight until it doesn't. You're not here for that. You know that." I have never liked people being right about me. She looked past me up the ramp as if she could see where I'd come from and where I had left myself behind.
"You missed it," she said. "You always miss it." "Miss what?" "The exit," she said. And a childish part of me wanted to say, "There is no exit 9. I looked, I counted, I know my area." But the childish part wasn't driving. I walked the length of her car. The rear bumper had a smear across it that didn't read like a scrape. It read like a hand dragged along paint searching for purchase. The plate was half fog, half memory. The trunk lid was dimpled in a pattern that would later look like fingertips and photographs. I shone the light under the chassis. The low ground there was wet, though the air hadn't committed to rain. A small stream cut the gravel under the ramp, the kind that forms where a design didn't plan for the way water insists. "Tell me what happened," I said. She didn't look at me when she answered. "I got off where the sign said, 'Same as you.' And then it moved," she said. And I wouldn't have understood that line if the ground beneath my boots hadn't answered by feeling subtly elsewhere than it had been a moment ago. Like the ramp adjusted its angle the way a bed does when you forget the setting is on automatic. I felt the urge to call for backup again, not because I thought anyone would reach me in time, but because a second voice on a channel is sometimes the difference between a story and a report. "Dispatch," I said, keeping my voice pinned to calm. "Advise ETA on secondary." Static slid over my ear like breath. Then, "Unit 27, secondary is en route. Do not leave the ramp. Repeat, do not leave the ramp." I hadn't moved. On the shoulder, the woman watched me the way people watch doctors, measuring the shape of the news I might hand them. "You're hearing yourself after you," she said. "That's all it is." "Excuse me?" She said, "The sound comes back, not just here, when it's quiet enough. A second later, a mile later, another life later." She laughed once, and it was a sound without surface. "You kept asking where exit 9 was. It's not where, it's when." "Ma'am," I said, "have you been drinking or taken any medication tonight?" "I've been waiting, that's all." Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. A single notification lighted her face. She didn't look at it. My shoulder mic clicked. "Unit 27, dispatch said. Caller lost signal. We're attempting redial." I reached into the car gently and took the phone. The screen was cracked in a starburst pattern that made the icons look as if they were falling. The missed call list showed a single number, repeated, unknown caller. The timestamp on the last missed call was 1 minute from now. I felt something in my back teeth then, a faint pressure and release, as if the world around me was breathing out of sync with the air. It's not a feeling you describe well later. You just remember your body deciding that clocks were furniture. "Walk me through your first call, from the beginning." She nodded, like it cost her. "I was on 41, coming back from my sister's. I missed my exit and decided to turn around at the next one. I saw 9, I took it. It curved left, then it curved more, and then there wasn't road, not the way road stays the same. There was just this ramp stretching down like a tunnel, like you were looking through a rolled map." She met my eyes. I tried to call, but I couldn't make the phone do the number. I kept getting the same recording. All circuits are busy. Then I heard an operator, an actual operator. She asked what city I was calling from. I told her. She said her board didn't have a listing for it. "Okay," I said. because the voice you use to keep panic from calcifying is a tool you have to keep clean. Okay. The fog thickened as if to join our conversation. If you've never watched weather decide to participate in a call, it's a kind of mercy. It gives your mind a mechanical thing to look at while the parts that hurt keep moving under the hood. I did the checklist. Plates, VIN, insurance card. They were all there, all consistent, all aiming in the direction of ordinary. Then, because routine is a rope, I asked for her license. She handed it to me. My name was on it. I've been in rooms where the temperature drops because the air changes. Opening a freezer, stepping into a morgue. This was not that. This was the temperature inside you breaking. You rebuild yourself around the noise. I said, "Bad joke. Very bad." She looked at the card and then at me like she didn't understand which of us I was. I told you, you didn't see me. You were busy apologizing to the air. The most dangerous thing you can do on a night like that is decide what the story is before it finishes telling itself. I turned the license over and found a note taped to the back in my handwriting. Check the ramp, not the road. I wanted to ask 100 questions, then I wanted to ask none. What I did was step away and key my mic. Dispatch, I need a full unit sweep on 41 northbound at mile 12. Confirm whether an exit 9 has ever existed within our current jurisdiction. There was no answer. The channel was open. I could hear the room behind the voice, the printer, the chair, the coffee maker that burps like an old man. But the voice didn't arrive. Then it did. "Negative," dispatch said. "There is no exit 9 in current or historical records." "Copy," I said. And half a second later, I heard myself say it again, my own voice tinting lower as if the recording I wasn't making had been slowed by a hand I couldn't see. I walked to the lip of the ramp, where the gravel met a blackness that wanted to be more. The beam of my light went out into it and returned thinner. Somewhere beyond, a shape gathered. A curve of guardrail. The suggestion of a merge lane. The idea of a shoulder, like the blueprint of a thing being held up behind a stage curtain. I told her, "You said you missed it. What did I miss?" She said, "Your turn. The one you tell yourself you'll take when you're ready to stop doing this. But you don't stop. You loop." I pulled men out of upside-down cars, and the smell that meets you, gasoline and pennies and something like hot plastic, is not a smell so much as a fact that enters your blood. I caught a drift of that now, and my body remembered a night I hadn't had yet. "Why are you waiting here?" I asked. "Because you always arrive, and you're always late." My radio clicked. A second voice rode the channel on a whisper carrier. The way the kid who's not brave enough to own a prank will still be brave enough to stand near it. "Unit 27, it said in a voice that was more geography than person. "Do not take the ramp." I looked at the woman and she shook her head like we'd rehearsed this in a life we didn't get to keep. "If you don't take it, it takes you. That's the only rule here." I breathed through my nose and tasted aluminum. The fog shifted, then settled like a cat deciding which part of you to sleep on. I stepped off the gravel and onto the ramp. The first 10 feet were physics. The next 10 were suggestion. The 10 after that were memory pretending to be concrete. If you've ever walked on blackout curtains laid across a gym floor, you know the sound. Slip, catch, drag that makes you lift your feet higher than you need to. Behind me, the cruiser's light bar continued painting weather, but it felt like it was painting yesterday. Ahead, the ramp curled down into a space that tightened as it went, the way a paper cone tightens as you twist it. I kept my beam on the surface and looked for the trick that would give it away. A cut where old asphalt met new, water pooling where a crown was wrong, gravel embedded in tar at a wrong density. What I found were footprints. They weren't shoe prints. They were the absence of fog in the shape of a shoe, a series of not wet ovals leading down into a pocket where the sound of my radio arrived late. "Hayes," dispatch said, and then Hayes again fractionally afterward. "I'm here," I said. The second me said it too. The woman stayed at the shoulder like a fixed star. I don't know what she saw from her angle. Maybe I didn't move, maybe I never have. Halfway down, the ramp stopped being ramp and became room. The fog roofed itself across above me, turning the world into a tunnel. My beam found the wall, a retaining wall where no earth required retaining. In it, a maintenance hatch, painted the color of compliance, padlocked with a lock that had never known rain. The hatch had a number stamped into its metal. 9. I have a universal key for locks that belong more to policy than to metal. It lives under the seam of my vest. I pressed it into the lock out of a superstition that felt like protocol. The lock released. Behind the hatch, a narrow stair that turned back on itself like a thought you don't want but keep having. The air cooling by degrees as if sleep itself pooled there. My shoulder mic thumped against concrete as I went down. The signal lagged, caught up, lagged. It started adding words I hadn't said yet. Hayes en route, Hayes on scene, Hayes with party. At the bottom, a room of cinder block and intention. A desk with a phone that belonged to a decade whose edges get round when you speak it out loud. A wall with a single window that didn't look into anything. I say window. It might have been a mirror. If it was a mirror, it had forgotten how to give back. The phone rang. There's a specific phone ring designed by men who want time to obey them. This one had that flavor. Clean, authoritative, unapologetic for the way it entered you. I picked it up because I think we all pick it up. "Unit 27, I said. And a second after I said it, a second me said it too. "You're late," the woman's voice said. But now it wasn't the woman above, it was a voice taught to be a voice. The kind they give to operators and dispatchers, and anyone whose job is to be the part of the system that sounds like a person. "Where am I?" I asked. "You're at the decision, where you always are when you think you're working." "Who are you?" "I'm whoever answers," she said. "Tell me which report you want to write." The mirror that wasn't a window was a color glass doesn't choose for itself. Behind it, or in front of it, movement accumulated the way ideas do when you keep feeding them. "What happens if I leave?" I asked. "You don't. You loop until your story makes a shape you can carry." My hands had done a thing without asking me. They had put the receiver back in its cradle. The dial tone that followed wasn't a tone, it was a heart monitor that had decided being a tone was safer. I went back up the stairs. The fog hadn't moved. The world had. At the top, the ramp was empty of footprints except the kind the air makes when it remembers where you were. The woman stood by her car with her hands on the roof the way people do when you tell them it's okay now, even when it isn't. I walked toward her with the universal key still warm under my vest, and the parts of me that believe in cause looking for their correspondent effects. "What did you do?" she asked. And the question wasn't accusation so much as enrollment. I answered. That's what starts it. That's what keeps it from ending. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. Her eyes teared the way eyes do when you see the name you prayed would appear and it isn't the name. She turned the screen to show me. The caller was labeled home. The number was mine. I didn't take the phone. I didn't need to. My shoulder mic clicked. "Unit 27, said a voice I hated and loved because it was me. "Confirm you have visual on RP's vehicle." I pressed the transmit and didn't. The other me answered. 10-12, signal strong, subject calm. "Copy," dispatch said. "Be advised, there is no exit 9. "Copy," the second me said. And then I said it, and the channel closed like water, taking back the shape of a hand. "There is a way out of some places, and it looks like staying." I told the woman we would get a tow and that I would stay until it arrived. She nodded like we had said vows. I wrote the report in my head as the minutes arranged themselves into a number line that did not include 9. Vehicle disabled. No collision. No injuries. Driver released to tow. No mention of the hatch. No mention of the window that had forgotten how to return an image. No mention of the phone that rings when you stand in the place where the ramp chooses what you are. I have learned that some things are true even if they are not real, and some things are real even if they never become true. The tow truck's lights appeared where the ramp became interstate, which is to say they appeared in the place the world keeps for rescues that don't need to happen. The driver was a man I've seen in a dozen towns. He looked at me and then passed me like I'd brought the weather and it had brought me. He hooked the sedan and didn't ask questions. He didn't look at the driver. He didn't look at the ramp. He signed a form that did not understand what we had done and drove away with a car that by morning would be a car in a lot, tagged and ordinary. The woman stood with her hands in her jacket pockets, light making her into two people with two shadows. "This is the part where you say it didn't happen," she said. "I don't know what happened," I said. And for a minute I was grateful to whatever part of language had built a sentence that lets a person not be a liar and not be brave. I followed her up the ramp in the cruiser. At the merge, she didn't look, and there was no oncoming. We rejoined a highway that had never lacked an exit 9 because it had never had room in its story for an extra number. At mile marker 10, my radio popped and dispatch's voice arrived on time. "Unit 27, status." "Clear," I said. "Vehicle released to tow." "Copy," they said. "Be advised, we've received multiple ghost calls tonight. Same cell tower, no subscriber ID, all list your call sign." "Copy," I said, and no second me said it. The air stayed put. I drove the woman to a lit exit that had a number I recognized. She thanked me like people thank doctors when the news is not good, but it is the truth. Before she got out, she looked at me like she had once and might again. "You'll take it next time, the turn," she said. I didn't answer. She closed the door gently as if I were asleep. Back at the precinct, I downloaded the bodycam.
The footage didn't skip the way I felt it had. It did something worse. It presented continuity. The part where my voice answered late was clean. The part where the hazard lights became heartbeat was just lights being lights. The part where the hatch opened was a section of video in which the lens turned and found ground and nothing else. The audio file from the universal phone downstairs was a hum that tested at 60 hertz, house current, the kind that rides everything you plug into a wall. I wrote the report that wouldn't cost me my badge. I filed it in the place where truths sleep under the pillow of policy. When I left for the night, the precinct lobby was empty and the vending machine made the sound vending machines make when they forget there's no one to impress. As I reached for the door, the phone on the public counter rang. It was the old kind that requires a hand. And I picked it up because a part of me still thinks that's what you do when a world calls your name. Unit 27, I said. My voice answered a half-second later from somewhere small and close. Do not take the ramp.
That was Officer Hayes with Echoes from Exit 9. Some exits are numbered, Night Owls, and some are decisions we circle until the road runs out. If you find yourself driving past a sign that doesn't belong, and a voice answers you from a half-second behind, do yourself a favor. Stay on the road you can prove. Until next time, this is Midnight FM. Stay safe and stay in the light.